Yes. I guess we'll just wait 1 or 2 more minutes to see if more people join. Okay, I think it's 1 minute past the hour. We've got nearly 30 people present here. So let me just start with a few introductory remarks. Yeah, first of all, of course, hello everyone. Good to see that there is such an interest in our webinars. Today you're joining to learn something about JOSM for beginners. And so let me start with well, telling you who will be speaking here. So we've got Akintola Mercy and Jeffrey Katteregger and myself, Michael Heismeyer. We're all active in the training working group in the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. And yeah, we'd like to share the burden of presenting things to you among us. And what can you expect? we'll start right from the beginning with the installation and a quick overview over the user interface. After that, we'll talk a bit about layers for data and imagery and how to populate them. And after that, we'll go into the basics of editing, points, lines, and some shapes, and move on to more complex things like multi-polygons and what JOSM will do when you want to upload the data. So there will always be one presenter, and two of us will be listening what you're typing in the chat. So if you've got any questions, if one of the speakers should repeat something, just type it in the chat, and either one of the people here will answer that, or will also interrupt the speaker if necessary. So yeah, and with those few remarks, I think I would like to start with the installation and user interface job, and after that, Jeffrey will take over for layers, imagery, and how to get there. So okay, so the best thing how you could start here is the website josm.openstreetmap.de. On that homepage, you will find anything you need. You can download the latest version of JOSM there. And there is also an extensive page here on download, which tells you anything you need to know, all the download options for the different operating systems. JOSM, this abbreviation, stands for, okay, means you can barely hear me. Let me see if I can tune up the volume a little bit more. Is that better right now? Or is it still that I'm barely audible? Could someone give me some?
I think you are audible. Maybe the problem is on Bokori's side, so you are very much audible.
Okay, so as JOSM stands for Java OpenStreetMap Editor, this means that you will need to download also Java, and all that is explained in here. Troubleshooting for Java, where you can get current Java versions, how you can test whether everything is all right. So if you follow these instructions, you will end up with something like this. This is a very pristine JOSM right as it was downloaded. The only quick change I made is that I switched the language to English so you can follow what I'm doing here. And the very first thing is you need to customize it a little bit. You will find here in the edit menu, there is a preferences entry, and you can also use the keyboard shortcut F12, and it takes you to the preferences display. So the very first thing you should always do is click expert mode. That will enable a few menu points which you might feel should be helpful. And once you are there, of course, you can adapt the language. In this case, I changed it to English. Next point is you need to install the connection with the OSM server. And the very first thing you should note is never use basic authentication. You should use OAuth. Using OAuth means it automatically asks you to verify your credentials with OpenStreetMap with the website, and then a token is placed into your installation. So you just need to click on Authorize Now, and then you will need to insert your OpenStreetMap username and your password, and then things will proceed pretty automatically. So this is, of course, important, otherwise you wouldn't be able to save any data in the database. After that, another point here is the plugins tab. We need a few plugins, so when you go to that plugins page, you will first see nothing. That means you just have to click on download the list of available plugins. And there are two plugins which we'll need right away in this session. So the first one is the buildings tools. That's something you should always install. And the other one is the utils plugin. Utils plugin 2, as it's called, which will enable a couple of useful menu entries. So then you just say, okay. And it tells you that these have been downloaded. And these are plugins which don't need you to close and open again the JOSM. They can be used right away. And as most of you will be certainly working in connection with the tasking manager, we still have to get back to the preferences menu and have to enable remote control, because that is what the tasking manager will use to communicate with JOSM. So you just enable remote control, don't have to mess around with any of these settings, and then you're done. So this is very basic tuning, which you should do once you download a new version of JOSM. So in order to give you a better overview of what the user interface looks like, we just have to load something. That's the green arrow in here. And it really doesn't matter where we are, we can just go anywhere and download some data in here. And that means that the user interface is populated. So on the left side, you will see some of the buttons which you will use very frequently, because here you can change the different modes. By default, it is in select mode. And this one here, draw nodes, is what we call the add mode. That's why the shortcut is A. And there is also delete modes and a few others we'll be talking about later on. JOSM comes with an extensive set of keyboard shortcuts pre-configured. Once again, if we get back with a 12 to the preferences menu, they are configurable to a large extent. So there are some which are unassigned here, and you could also assign your own shortcuts or change shortcuts here if you feel something is more mnemonic for you. Most of the shortcuts are also visible when you go here. So here it says S is for select and A is for drawing nodes. These are the things which you will use very frequently. And if you want to get out of one of these modes, you can always do so by hitting the escape key. That will always get you back to selection mode. Followed by that are a few icons where you can select here the tabs here which are visible on the right side. Yeah. So yeah, just see that people in the chat would like to have a chance to review all that. So just to inform you, the session is recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, where you can also find out some of the previous recordings from past years. So reviewing that is certainly no problem, but yeah, if you missed something and I should repeat something, yeah, let us know here in the chat, and either I'll see it myself or one of my colleagues will let me know. So anything you do here can also be accessed from the menu, of course. So here, as I said, this is for the selection mode. Here you can switch on and off those tabs here on the right side. And the default here with layers, with tags, and with selection are typically the most important three windows we need here on this side. In the bottom, we've got, for instance, here a coordinate view, which tells you where you are. And quite an interesting feature is that if you click on it, you can enter a geographical coordinate or a place name to search for, and then simply jump to that position. On the top, there are a few here of the toolbar icons using the most often needed things here, which you will use. You can configure that wildly. I mean, again, if 12 for preferences and the toolbar. So this is on the left side here, you can see what your toolbar looks like. Currently, basically, all items from the menu are available. So, one thing I can really recommend is the download in current view. That's something I use extremely frequently. So if that's of interest to you, you just highlight it, then pull it over here, and yeah, it's down there. Then you can highlight it here, and with the arrow, you can move it to a more convenient position. Of course, it is deeply connected with download data, and once you hit OK, you've got one more icon in here. So why do I say it is useful? Well, let's assume you've got some imagery loaded in here, and you see, well, you just downloaded this area, and now you see, oh, those few buildings here are of interest to you. Well, you just move to the area, you just say download in current view, and then it connects with the server and downloads the rest of the area, which is currently here on your screen. So you just need a few more adjacent data. That would be something I use very, very frequently. So this is one of the icons here on the toolbar, which I need very often. So, okay. And yes, as you can see now, we've got the information on the two layers. Jeffrey will soon continue and tell you more about this window. If you highlight something, then all the information about the selected object will be visible in here with these two windows. And relations is something we'll cover later on. So this is just the basic introduction here for the user interface and how it's organized. And oops. So that means you don't you see my screen any longer? Oh, yeah.
We can see a screen, Michael.
Okay, so then maybe there's a network issue as well. Yeah. So okay, so that's the basics. You will very often use these icons here or the relevant shortcut keys in order to switch between different editing modes. As I said, with Escape, you can get out of anything you selected and out of any editing mode you selected here. You can switch on additional windows. We'll cover some of them later on. And the toolbar will offer you the most frequently used options from the menu, and you can customize that. So, and with that, I think I've come to the end of the very first part, covering how to get JOSM, how to get it running, and how to configure it so that it's useful for you. Before I hand over to Jeffrey, do we have any questions I missed at this point? If that is not the case, then I'd say just okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Cassie from Solidarity Initiative for Refugees. I actually don't have a question, but just want to highlight that we have a team from Solidarity Initiative for Refugees in the call. Maybe if there's those ones who have undergone this training from the beginning, maybe they can also say about themselves and what they've been able to achieve so far. And if they have a question, it's the good opportunity for them to ask and get to know more about what we are looking for to do where in regards to mapping and initiative for refugees. Yeah, I think that's what I just wanted to flag out. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And well, as was mentioned earlier, if you've got any questions relevant to what is currently being presented, best ask them in the chat. And I'm sure we'll have time for more general remarks at the end as well. And yeah, that brings us to the next agenda point. Yeah, I think Jeffrey is next on our agenda. And after him, I will get back to you with the basic editing part 1.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And like Mike has mentioned, if you have any questions, please do drop them in the chat, and then we'll come back to you with the answers. So sharing my screen now. All right, so yeah, like Mike has mentioned, I'm going to be taking us through the concept of layers. What we have just seen is how do you download your JOSM? How do you set it up to get it ready for mapping? But I think we have also seen a little bit from Michael's presentation how to download the data, to bring in the data into your JOSM, and it'll be later on looking at how do you now work with that data, how do you make changes to it and then upload it back to OSM. So I think we have seen already one way how to bring in our data, but I want to show us a few other ways. Also how to bring in the data from, for example, the tasking manager or from OpenStreetMap itself. Like Michael was showing us in the configuration, when you are in edit and then preferences, one of the key things is remote control, making sure that is enabled, because that will help you to connect your JOSM to OpenStreetMap, but also to the tasking manager. And I'm going to walk us through that before I show you how to work with the layers. Yes, I'm just going to switch to my OpenStreetMap, the OpenStreetMap website here. So this is OpenStreetMap. Let us say you're already logged in and you want to do some editing, but you want to edit using JOSM. How do you get started? Yeah, one of the things you can do is to download the data directly from JOSM, like Michael was showing us. But the other way would be for you to be able to just zoom into the place that you want to map. So I'm going to go to some place in South Africa, in Polokwane, more specifically in Makwenge, here near the University of Limpopo. So let us say I want to make some edits in this area. So when I zoom in to the map, you see the edit button is grayed out when you're not zoomed in, but once you zoom in, the edit button is going to be visible. Okay, the edit button is now active. And if you click on the drop down arrow here near the edit button, what you're going to see is the editing options that you have available. So you can either edit with ID, but also you can edit with JOSM. So edit with remote control, JOSM. So this is what I'm going to select. And once I select that, you can see my JOSM is now becoming active and it's downloading data now. It's contacting the server and it's downloading data within my my interface. So as you can see here now, I have data that I can work with, make changes, and then update. But what is most important is that everything that you download in your JOSM is added as a layer. So you can see here, this is data layer 1, which has just been downloaded. But to be able to edit, you need other layers. So the other layer that I can add is to go here to my imagery, and I can choose which imagery I want to use. So I may want to use, for example, Maxa imagery. So if I load the Maxa imagery, you can see it here. It's loading, so I'll just give it a moment to load. So I can now see my data layer, but I can also see my data layers. I have the data layer and then the imagery layer. These are the two different options. Again, the steps were I went OSM, zoomed into a place, and then I said edit with JOSM, and then I got my data, and then I added my other layers. These layers, like I said, you can make changes to them, and then you can upload, but you can also remove them. So for example, if I want to remove this layer from my JOSM, the imagery layer, I can just come here, select it, and then I can come here and say delete selected layer. So I've deleted the layer from my interface, from my work interface, but that doesn't mean I've deleted data from OpenStreetMap. No, doesn't mean that I've deleted that imagery. No, I've just removed it from my my interface. I can also remove the data layer, and once I do that, it will just take me back to my JOSM, like the beginning place. So that's one way how to bring in data. Yes, Annie, I can take your question.
Hi, Geoffrey. I'm sorry, there are several people having challenges seeing your screen, and since this has now come up for the second time, I think we must maybe just check into that.
Okay.
There are several different people who are having challenges seeing the screen, both Namibians and also Louis Wambua. So thank you.
Yes, I can see Louis mentioning. Yeah, can people mention in the chat if you can see my screen? If several people say they are okay, then maybe
for me it is okay. I didn't see any problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see your JOSM.
Yeah, maybe Louis Wambua, maybe what I would advise you do is maybe restart your Zoom. Yeah, restart your Zoom. That might solve the problem because other people can see the screen. But yeah, thanks Annie for flagging that. So yeah, I've just shown us one way how to bring in our data into JOSM from the OpenStreetMap interface. But the other way that we normally use, especially for humanitarian mapping, is using the tasking manager. So I'm just going to go to my tasking manager here, and I'm going also to show us how to bring in data from the tasking manager into JOSM for editing. Okay, so I'm on the tasking manager here, and basically what I would do is to go to explore project, explore projects, and I'll find one project that I want to contribute on. So there's a project 13596, which is also for the same area, Makweng, Polokwane. So if I select that project and then click on start contributing, it will bring for me the squares, and then I can select one square for mapping. But if you want to map using JOSM, where there is editor here, make sure you select JOSM, because if it is ID here, then it is ID which will open up. But if you select JOSM here and you say map a task, then your data will open up in JOSM. Yeah, for those who are new to the tasking manager, the importance really is for collaborative mapping. This is the same area that I can map through OSM directly, but if we map through the tasking manager, it avoids duplication of data, because two people cannot map the same task at the same time. So each person picks out one task and they map it and complete that task. So I'll select one task here as an example, and then I'll go ahead and say map selected. So once I say map selected, what's going to happen still? You're going to see my JOSM is downloading data here. But what is really interesting here is that I have 3 layers which have been loaded. So I have the OSM data layer. I also have the boundary for the task. So I can see my task has like a boundary here, meaning that I'm not supposed to map beyond this boundary. But I can also see the Maxa imagery, which has just been automatically loaded from the tasking manager. So this is very important for you to be able to work with your layers. And if at any one time you don't see this layers panel, then you can just simply go back to Windows here and make sure you activate it. And you can see I have different things here in my interface, but I can also decide to remove some of them. So I can remove to-do list, I can remove filter, but I can also add them back if I want to. So yeah, what are some of the things that are important for you to know when it comes to layers? One is that you can hide and you can unhide your layer. So there is this icon here which looks like an eye. So if I click on it here, I can hide my imagery and I can see just the data, but I can also unhide it by just clicking on it. So that's one thing. Yeah, you can always hide and unhide your data. So for example, if I hide the data, you can see now I'm seeing my imagery, but I'm not able to see the data from OpenStreetMap, but I'm able to switch it back on like that. The other thing that is important, if I select my imagery layer here, I can also change the visibility. Yeah, so if I come here and click on visibility here, there are some things I can change. For example, I can change the opacity. So if I change this, sometimes you may get imagery which is really very bright and you're not able to see clearly. So you can change your opacity here. You can also change the colorfulness of your layer. So sometimes changing the colorfulness makes objects a bit more clear. Yeah, you can also change the gamma. So something like that. And also you can change the sharpness of your layer. The sharpness will not increase the resolution of your imagery, but it can also help sometimes to make it a bit more clear. And like I said, the other thing that you can do, you can also remove your layer from the layers by clicking on the delete. But also you can activate the selected layer. So you have to be careful with the activation button, because what is recommended is to make sure it is the data layer which is always active. So let us say I activate the imagery layer here. What is going to happen is that the imagery layer is active and I can know it is the active one because I can now see this green icon here, which is a tick, and it's telling me here, this layer is now the active layer, okay? But if I want to make but what this does is now I can't see my data layer, like I can't select anything here in my data layer. So if I need to make the OSM data active again, I select it and then I say, activate the selected layer. And this will make my OSM data layer active. That means I can come here and select an object and I can be able to see its properties here. Yeah, so the other last thing that I want to mention when it comes to the layers is the order of your layers. Right now we are having our OSM data layer, which is on top, but I can change the order and bring it down. So if I bring this down, you can see like my OSM data layer is now at the bottom of the layers. But you also don't want to put your data layer at the bottom, always make sure it is at the top, because now I can't see my OSM data, I can't be able to select it. So if if I need to change the order of OSM data and bring it back at the top, I can just simply use this arrow. And now I have my OSM data layer at the top. You can also add more than one imagery layer. For example, I can add Bing. And this helps if you want to compare two imagery options. So what I've just loaded here now is JOSM, Esri, but I can also add Bing. So what you're seeing now is that I'm having 3 imagery options, but I can be able to switch on. Now what I'm seeing here is Maxa, but I can switch on Bing here and I can be able to compare. I can be able to compare Bing with Maxa. I can also switch on Esri, and this is useful because you always want to map using the right imagery according to the instructions. But also sometimes something may not be clear on Bing, and you want to make it clear. You want to compare with another imagery source. So that's how you can compare. Yeah, you can also see there's some offset here on the imagery, and but there are ways how to offset that. To correct the offset. So yeah, that's it with layers. How you can play around with the layers, which is important for you to know when you're working with JOSM. So I'll pause there if there are any questions. If there are not any questions, then I'll hand over back to Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Jeffrey. I think there are no unanswered questions at this point. So let me...
I see a hand from Lindsay. Maybe we can give one chance to Lindsay to ask. Lindsay, go ahead.
Okay, and thank you so much. Jeffrey, so I wanted to ask, how is one able to get the JOSM Java to be able to help them use for the editor, especially because, some of us have OSM accounts and have been doing editing there, but to be able to map for resilience and other things like mapping communities and all that. So you could kindly assist us.
Okay, if I got your question where you are asking how do you get Java OpenStreetMap editor? So yeah, like Michael was showing in the earlier session, you can download it from the JOSM website. I have also just dropped the link in the chat. It's not a very big application, so yeah, you can always download it and install it. There are different packages for depending on your system, whether it is Windows, Ubuntu, or Mac. You can always find the right version and install it on your machine. Yes. Over to you, Michael.
Yeah, so should be visible right now. I've again put it up here. So josm.openstreetmap.de is where you can get it from. Okay, so that brings us to, well, how you can do actual mapping and adding data to the map. So let's say you've downloaded an area like this one in here, and you see, okay, so here is a settlement, a hamlet probably, which hasn't been mapped so far, and we'd like to do a little bit more here. So basically the most basic kind of object, of course, is a point. A point is something which can designate a place like a hamlet or a town, or it could be some shop in a village. Or simply, we use the editing mode draw nodes, or A, and if you just want to place a single node, for instance, for this hamlet, then you just use a double click, and there we are. Obviously, if you don't tell people what it is about, nobody will be able to make any use of it. So that's what we call assigning tags to that. And there is the presets menu here in JOSM, and there you've got all kinds of well, tags you could assign. So in this case, it would be geography, and then places, and then where you've got all the different categories. And that, well, right at the beginning brings us to the question, how do you know what to select? And there is the definitive reference here on the OpenStreetMap wiki, and that is a page called Map Features. It's wiki.openstreetmap.org/wiki/map_features. And this is a list of all generally agreed upon tags. It's sorted by some categories in here. And so, for instance, if you would like to add a shop, shops about food and beverages, and you scroll down there, you can see what kinds of key and value pairs for those tags are already generally agreed. You get a quick description what it is like, and also a video which makes clear what it is meant to be. So if we take a look here at about places, you can see here populated settlements, and see that, well, we've got urban and rural, and there you say hamlet, for instance, is a smaller rural community with maybe something like 100 or 200 inhabitants and just a little infrastructure. If it's a bit more, then it's maybe a village. So in this case, we are looking at here, hamlet might be appropriate. So we go for presets, geography, places, and call it a hamlet. So whenever you see some of these forms, please only enter any of the data if you're sure about that. When we're doing remote mapping, we usually don't have a lot of information. We don't know how that place is called, so we just apply the preset, and now here we've got the hamlet. Also very important when it comes to roads and buildings, I've often seen people writing a description into the name tag. You should never do that. Please only enter any data into these forms when you're sure about, when you have local knowledge, for instance. Next thing is we should make sure that this hamlet is connected to the rest of the world. Well, we can see that here is some track going on down there, which connects this hamlet with the main road over here. So how do we do that? We're still in this draw nodes mode. If we wouldn't have been there, we should enter it, because we now draw a series of nodes. And that means just, well, let's start here right in the middle of this hamlet. Click once and then extend it down here. And very important for roads, connect it with this major road here. So you will see that if you get very close to it, the icon here will appear and it will connect with this other feature. So it's snapping to that. And if I make a double click here to end my editing, it will be connected to this major road. That's important when you are drawing roads, because we're interested in road networks, not in isolated segments of roads. So always make sure if you draw a new road to connect it with some existing road. Again, in this case, we need to assign tags, so it makes it clear that this is kind of a road. So if I get back here to this map features page, of course, right from the beginning, there is an extensive coverage of highways, but you will soon recognize that it's mostly from a fairly industrialized country point of view. So you see that most of all highways, secondary, tertiaries, and even unclassified are tarred roads, which does not necessarily apply to many of the countries we're mapping in. So always keep in mind this highway classification has something to do with importance. And particularly in the context we're mapping in Highway Tag Africa, which is another page here on the OpenStreetMap wiki, might give you better guidance with the some more appropriate pictures. And it tells you that, for instance, an unclassified or minor road is one which connects settlements. So anything which does not connect a settlement would be an unmaintained track road. So clearly, what we do here is we connect a settlement with a major road. So that would be an unclassified highway. Okay, let's get back to JOSM. And yeah, here are the presets, and we've got highways and streets, and here we've got the unclassified one. So keep in mind, unclassified doesn't mean we don't know anything. Unclassified is, in our context, the lowest level road which connects settlements. And again, there isn't much you could fill in here. You might want to note that it's an unsurfaced road, for instance, it's unpaved. Most definitely, that's what we can see. Other than that, leave everything as it is. Don't mess around with any access restrictions. I've seen roads classified as horse yes and motorcycle yes. Well, these are the defaults. So please only change anything else if you're pretty sure about that. So ways, of course, cannot only be highways, they could also be waterways. And here we see a small river flowing here into the lake. And yeah, that brings us to the question, how do we map it? Where do we start? And there is a generally agreed upon rule that the direction of the way which shows the waterway should be the direction of flow. Well, in this case, it is easy, of course. Here it goes into this lake or ocean. But there are many cases where we simply don't know that. Well, for instance, have a look at this situation here. We're out in the middle of nowhere. We see that there is a waterway, but we don't see a lot more. There is an interesting layer which we can use. It's the OpenStreetMap layer because it contains terrain contours. It might not be available by default here in your imagery menu. So then just go to imagery preferences, where in the top window you can see all of the imagery layers available. There are a couple of others which might come to your rescue. So CycleOSM is also a layer which contains contours. This is the OpenStreetMap I was talking about right now. There is also an open topo map, so you might want to play around which one looks best in your eyes. So let's get to the OpenStreetMap layer here. And yeah, so that gives us shaded imagery and also contour lines. And yeah, so the numbers are not clearly visible, but if you look closer, then this here is the 50-meter contour line. And this here is 100, 150, and 200. So we clearly see that the terrain falls from west to east. And yes, as Jeffrey mentioned previously, you can then play around a little bit with visibility. So you can reduce the opacity of this layer. And so you could, that also helps sometimes to get an idea of how the terrain is connected to the imagery you're looking at. So in this case, it would be very clear that we will add this one here from from southwest to northeast. Going back to the area I was showing you previously, that means we would again add nodes or hit the shortcut A and then start anywhere where you'd like and try to follow it fairly closely. So, and connect it here with the waterway. So, and we've got, of course, another preset for that as well. There is water, and we don't know, we need shipping, we need water, and the only question always is river or a stream. And if you have a look at the OpenStreetMap wiki, it will tell you a stream is something you can usually jump over. So that rather qualifies as a river. What we've done here is not quite the optimum, because now we've got a crossing here between this waterway and highway. And that is something which isn't right, because, well, how do you cross the waterway on the highway? Is it a ford? Is it a bridge? Or you should only leave it like that if the imagery would not have sufficient resolution that you get a glimpse of that. Sometimes it is better maybe to quickly switch off the editing layer so that you can have a look. And I mean, here is a clear shadow, so makes it pretty clear that we've got a bridge in here. Yeah, we need to interrupt the highway here and make sure it's no longer just a highway, but it's a bridge. How do we do that? We get, well, first of all, we should hit the escape key so that we clear any selection. We are still in editing mode, and that means at the end of the bridge, at the two ends of the bridge of the highway, we simply place a node, which means we can cut the highway there. So one double click here and another double click here, and then we can get back to select mode just by hitting the S key, for instance. And then we select those two nodes. Well, it's pretty clear what these two nodes denote. There are no other features connected to these. Otherwise, you'd also have to select the highway. And then use one of those tools. And in this case, we need to split the way. So there's also the shortcut P, and it's one of the icons here, which is also present in the toolbar. Just click here, and then it asks you which way segment should reuse the history of the whole path. By default, it selects the longest one, which usually makes sense. So we just hit OK. And then, yeah, we just need to make sure that this segment here is a bridge. Now, still all of the segments are still highlighted. So we just want this one here. And that means we need to add tags. So we just see, okay, highway and classified. You can go up here and use this link in order to get back to the form. And then we have the bridge in here. So we click this, but that is not everything, because, well, a bridge, well, we still have to tell the map database that this bridge is intended to be vertically above the river. And the concept for this is layer. By default, everything is on layer 0, and that's why you cannot assign a layer 0, because if you don't assign a layer, then it means layer 0. In this case, we just select layer 1, which means it's above 0, and then dot. And now we've got a bridge, which is definitely above the river. Higher layer numbers are only requested if you have more complex constructions, such as if there would be a railway bridge or another highway or motorway bridge way above that, then this one would be assigned layer 2. Similarly, for the negative layers, if there is something in a tunnel, you would start with -1, and if there is another tunnel beyond that tunnel, that would be -2. So these layer numbers are simply vertical orderings. They have nothing to do with any real distances, so it's not meters. Just use the next one appropriate. So in this case, we've got now a bridge, which in this editor here also is clearly visible. If it would be a level crossing, then you would just make sure that you have a node which they all share in common. And when you go back to the presets, highways, I'm just thinking it would be waypoint, well, just okay, there we are, streets, and then that would be Ford, which makes it explicitly clear that yeah, there is no bridge. That's important, particularly in humanitarian context, because in the rainy season, it may be the difference between you can move along there or you can't. So it's really important that we properly mark intersections here. Well, number 3 would be, well, now we've covered points, we've covered ways, and of course there are closed ways as well. One could use it to mark the land use for the complete hamlet. So again, we need to go to edit mode, and then we roughly draw a line across here. If you haven't seen it before, with the right mouse cursor pressed, you can always move your viewing window here. And doesn't have to be absolutely exact. Done roughly is important. Again, double click at the last point, and then we have here this is land use, geography, land use. Oops. And then it would be the residential area. Okay, apply a preset. We don't have a name for that. And yeah, in the same way, of course, we could also map buildings, but there is a much better way to map buildings, and Mercy will go very much into detail how to map buildings. So that's something I'd like to skip here. The important point is always here, make sure that all objects you enter receive their appropriate tags so that people know what this object should mean. Don't guess wildly, just enter what you know, and when you're doing remote mapping, you will just see what it is good for, but you won't have any further information about names or things like that. Leave that to people on the ground who can collect all these information. And if in doubt, take a look at the wiki, which can always help you to find the proper tags. If you're mapping on a hot project from the tasking manager, the instructions here in the tasking manager should always tell you what you need to know for that particular project. So that should supersede anything, and anything which is mentioned there is something you should look up in the wiki. And so this is what covers basic editing in here. I think, do we have any open questions, something I should explain again?
Yes, Michael, there's a question on how do we save or upload data to OpenStreetMap within the ID editor. So if you could touch a bit on that.
I'm sure you mean the JOSM, not the ID.
Sorry, JOSM, yes.
So yeah, I think Mercy will also talk about that later on, but simply next to these download icons, you find the upload icon here, upload all changes in the active data layer. And yeah, okay, we just continue upload, then it would ask you for a comment explaining what you do. And if you upload changes, then they would go into the database. But I think Mercy will tell you more about that process and also about this validation window, which appeared here right in between. If there is nothing else here, then I think
there was also one other question from Jesaja. Is there something like a guideline in JOSM that you can use to align buildings against
I'm not quite sure what align buildings against means. So
My question is, if you take multiple buildings that are next to each other and you want the nodes to be aligned in the same dimensions, is there some feature that you can use to help you put the buildings aligned next to each other? So I hope that makes sense.
okay, that makes sense. So let me just add a few buildings here, and then so let's assume what you can always do is you select them here, and then let's see. No, building alignment isn't not aware of something. No. So unless Jeffrey has an idea right now, this is only for individual nodes, you could align them. That's not what we want to have in here. This is no. Not that I knew that right now. Maybe while Mercy will take on, and I will dive a little bit into that and maybe get back to you later on. So thanks for asking that. If there are no further questions at this point, then I would ask Mercy to continue with more complex shapes, anything around buildings and the like, and also cover a little bit the upload process.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mercy.
Okay. Let me share my screen now. Okay. Sorry, please, if you can see my screen, please let me know.
Not yet. Okay, seems to develop. Okay.
Yes.
We are seeing your JOSM.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So Jeffrey has showed us how to get our tax from taxing manager. So that was what I did. So this is somewhere in Limpopo, and I will focus more on mapping building features with or without holes, and also to validate the tags that are mapped on how to just validate it, is simple validations, and also to check commons errors in a tax. So that's what I'm going to be showing you now. And so let's start with how to map buildings. So let me just look for a building that have not been mapped so I can use that. Okay, I have a building here that okay, there's a building here due to the imagery. There's a building here. So mapping a building, we need to add a tools from our preference here. So from your preference, you're going to so you're going to go to your plugin and install a plugin which is building, because that's what you're going to be using to map the building to. So the name of the your keyboard key B. Please, if you can hear me, let me know. And
you just dropped out for maybe 10 seconds or so, but now you're back again.
Oh, okay. So after bringing the plugin, that's building tools. So you can now check out the buildings to map out. That's the features to map out. So I see a feature here. That's a building here. So I want to map it out. I'm going to press my keyboard B. That's B for ball, B for building. So I'm going to use that to map it out. So now, and while mapping it now, I see that it has some little edge here. So now it's telling me that I have overlapping building. So this overlapping building is just like the common error that we do notice while mapping buildings. So, and there is a plugin for that, just to set that up. You're going to go to your preference under mapping style. So it's going to load up. So you're going to see it here. Missing map, it mappers, validation, inline validations, and also you're going to pick that from here to add it here so that it can be showing you when you're having commons error, so that you not make that errors again. So that's it. So when that is done, it's going to tell you that we are having overlapping building. So for this, in the building together, so by pressing S to select the two building and hold on your shift key to join. That's, I'm using a shortcut key. That's to join the building is shift G. That's holding on your shift and pressing letter G to join it together. And you can also do it manually here. You can also do it manually here. 2, 0. So I'm going to select the 2. So make sure you select the 2 building. Come to it. So you're going to see it here that, okay, that's join overlapping area, that's shift G. So you're going to click that. So it has joined. So now, and let's check out some common errors we have in that same area. So now it's telling me that there's an error here. So that's me. This building is not overlaying, but it's very close to each other. That's the sign it's giving us here. So we're going to see if we can separate that. See, if we can't separate that. So the way to separate that is holding on J. That's you're ungrouping it. No, it is joined together before, but now you want to separate it. So pressing on G is like you're ungrouping the two buildings. So with that, now you're not going to have any errors on that. So you can now adjust the building edge and make it perfect. So, and there are sometimes you may be mapping and the road may be very closer to the building or is on the, like the building is on the road. So you just have to carefully separate it and zoom in very well, like zoom in very well to where it is detailed. So, okay, I think there's a building here. So I hope we are also practicing that on our end. So to make it more practical for both of us. So so now we are just mapping these parts, this building. Using that my shortcut key, letter B. So now let's check if this place is perfect. Now you see that it's not perfect yet. It's telling us that you're having errors. And these are the common errors here. So this overlapping building is saying that it's overlapping. So let's check it out. So I can just highlight them all and press on Shift G to join everything together, or I can separate it to see if I need to delete this one. But deleting other people's work is not actually good, just to, because let's take the person that mapped this one now and also the person that mapped this. So that's when 2 different people map this. Maybe due to internet issue, the person could not see that there's a feature there, and the person went along to map that same building. So now I will just join the buildings together. Okay, let me just delete this. Okay, let me just join this together. So that is one already. So I can just have this and fit it using my X, that's X for X-ray. So the keyboard X to just adjust those edge of the building to make it perfect. Yeah. So there are sometimes you can just highlight it and press Q to perfect the square. The Q is just to make the square more better for the building you're mapping. And there are sometimes some people will map buildings, and when you check it, they may not be building there, but you just have to check it and zoom in to just correct it. You can just take it away and see that, okay, these buildings are not together. So you just have to take it away and check. So you can now fit it to one building by converting it to a single building. Just a single building. So just hold on it, press your Q to perfect it. And you can now come along here to map another building here. So that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. So now there are some building that when they, let's say a multipurpose hall, which always have space in the middle. And while looking at the building, you can see that, okay, there's a space in the middle of this building. So I want to map the building with and leaving that space, leaving that hole within that building. So let's assume there's a hole here that you want to map out. So I will also map that hole as a building and pick those two buildings together. So it's telling me that building inside building. So that's mean a building is inside a building. But what I'm trying to do is that to join the two of them together and to just like I'm doing intersection. Yes, so that I'm bringing the two of them together and also showing that hole between it. So I've selected both building and I will hold on Ctrl B. So Ctrl B is like joining buildings together. Now, if I zoom in, you are going to see that there's a hole, there's a free space inside this hole here. But when I click on it, it's telling me that that's a building, and this one, that's the inner building. So that. So we are just going to check for common errors in the tags that you are mapping. So we're having one here. It's saying that overlapping building. So you just have to click on it and adjust it. So it's not going to give us that error. Again. So that has been perfect. So, and there's another one here. We just have to pick building and join it together. And join together. So when you see that you have mapped everywhere correctly, and you want to check manually, you want to check what you have mapped, if it's perfect or not. So you can actually just come here to your validation results down here on my right bottom corner. Yes. So validation results, you just click on this, perform the data validations. So now it has run that. So it's showing 6 warning. So unnamed. So it's saying that there are 6 errors here. Map dash is mostly the highways. So you're going to zoom to 1, zoom to problem. So it's saying that this one also. What is it trying to tell us? Oh, Jeffrey.
Yes, Mercy.
Okay. I'm getting this error unnamed ways, which is resident highway. Is it still correct or not? Because it's showing that one in here.
Yeah, I think it's just bringing the warning because the road doesn't have a name. But yeah, I think like we always do like some warnings we can ignore them. Yes.
Okay. So I would say it's correct. So the this tax is actually correct. So you can also check other features, more buildings to map. And there are some buildings within some buildings here to just map out. So now we see that this building is having different colors of roof. Maybe they're in the same compound, let's say there is a bungalow and I have the shop at the front. I don't know, that roof actually. So the person map it as a complete building. So Jeffrey, please, I need your help one more time. And this compound there, this particular place, is it going to be mapped separately or mapped together? Because the roof is actually different in color.
Yeah, I think
what do you
they
think?
are two different buildings, I can say.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can have this small extension as a separate building, and the one with the black roof as a
Okay.
separate building. Yeah.
Okay. Let me just perfect that here. So I'll just click on it and press my square and map the second building. So there are some building that has a bungalow and have a extension of shop at the front of it. So they are also together in the same compound, but different buildings. So so after that, when you see that your tax is fully mapped, and also you can just proceed to upload the tax. And if you find out that there's other buildings in that tax, they are very small and they are sure that is a building, you can go ahead to map them. So if you have any questions, you can also go to ask. So I think I need to show how to map. Okay, I've done that already. Multiple polygons in a particular building. Okay, let's just look for a complex building and map it as a multiple polygon. So let me just save this tax. Okay, let me save this tax and check another. So I'll just leave this like that and upload. So okay, let me share. Stop sharing. Sorry, I need to share my entire screen. Okay. Okay. Sorry, please, if you can see my screen, just let me know.
Yeah, we can see the tasking manager.
Okay. So for the tags that we map now, if it's not complete and you're sure that it's not complete yet, please don't say yes. And if you know that you're not complete with that tax, don't say yes to it. So let me just go back to my tax. So I'm very sure this my tax here is not complete yet. So I just want to go to another tax to look for multiple polygons that we can map and show how we can map a multiple polygons. So for this tax, I will not say yes, I'm going to say no, so that another person can go there and complete the tax. So let me just pick another random tax and check if it has a multiple polygon. Okay, let me just pick this and check. Oh, sorry. I think, okay. Okay. Now these areas now. So what I'm just looking for now is a multiple. I want to map out a multiple polygon building in this area. So okay. I'm just seeing more of a single building. So single building. So let me just use this open space to map a multiple polygon building. Let us assume we have a building that is multiple polygon in such that, okay, the building is like this, and also have another extension up here. And also, I will just, after mapping each building here, so I will just hold on my sheet and pick it at random and also press shift G to join it. So now, if assuming you're having a building here, so this is the shape is going to give us exactly the same thing in that building in that particular area. So, but now there's no building, so I have to delete these tags. Yeah, I have to delete it. So I'm just showing us how to map in multiple polygon. There are different ways of mapping multiple polygons buildings. So now I just have to correct the common errors in this task before I submit. So let me just validate it and check. So that shows us some errors here. So now we say that overlapping building just like the other tasks. So what are you going to use? Anyone? Someone can help me. What can we use to separate these two buildings together? Anyone? I want it to make it interactive. You can actually type and on your camera to share. Anyone? Okay. Is anyone responding? Jeffrey? Hello. Can anyone hear me?
Nothing in the chat yet.
Okay. Let me just
someone has just responded. Control G. That's
yeah,
Obed.
Control G. Okay, it's not Control G. It's just a letter G. Just a G. Just press a G on it. So you're going to highlight it and press. So after I'm picking it like this and press a G. So it's telling you that you want to perform this. You just say don't show again and press yes. So it's just going to separate it. So you're going to press a letter G on your keyboard. Only letter G, not Control G, just a letter G on your keyboard. And all. So I'm perfect. And perfect your other features closer to their building. So that is done. So you're going to check for other errors in that same area. So you're going to press the letter G. So if you have any question, you can just do go to share with us. Okay, now we have this one, this overlaying. Just have to bring it out and perfect it by pressing your letter Q to perfect your building. So we have one here. So let's check for common errors here. Okay. So we have other buildings here. Very small. Very small. Yes. We have other buildings here. So I'll just go ahead to upload this, to upload my changes. Yeah, and press OK. So that's been done. So Michael, yeah. So any question, if you have any question, you can just do it to ask. So it's going to be answered. And thank you. Hello, Jeffrey. Michael.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so far. I mean, at this point, we don't have that many questions. Yeah, there is one. Divaldo was wondering why imagery is much clearer for South Africa than for Namibia. Well, all of those imagery layers which we use are composed of literally millions of individual images taken at different points in time and typically also provided from different sources, different satellites. So all that varies widely. And of course, though, we don't have any influence in that, but we've got a couple of imagery layers available. And yeah, so also Maxar is pretty popular. It is also not too bad an idea to have a look whether Bing or Esri might have better imagery if you're not satisfied with Maxar's resolution. So, but yeah, their preference is how often they renew those images and how clear the images are.
Yeah, and also to add on, Michael, I also know like the government of South Africa also captured like open aerial imagery, and they kind of donated it to for editing in OpenStreetMap, and it's good resolution imagery. So that might be the other reason why maybe there is better imagery in South Africa than Namibia.
There is also one point. If you're, well, let me see, if you move somewhere into South Africa and download something from here and oops. Okay, the OpenStreetMap server reported an internal server error. That's nice. Okay, and oh, it's not that nice. So, but I'll give it a try. Okay, what I could do is, of course, download through the Overpass API. Give oops, and give that a try. Okay, that wouldn't always the same if you want to. So I wanted to show you something. Okay. No. Doing this OpenStreetMap and not. Okay, now we're better off. If you downloaded an area somewhere, in this case, above South Africa, and have a look at imagery, these are the preferences for imageries which you selected here. So yeah, the highlighted entries down here. In addition, it always tries to find better imagery in the area where you are currently. So you see here is some aerial imagery. Yeah, marked as best in this region. So it would be certainly worthwhile to give it a try. And yeah, there you are with it. So it's always advisable to see if among the next to those imagery layers, which you're familiar with, there might be another one which is recommended in here. Okay. So don't see any other questions here at this point. Okay, so before we come to the very end of the session, you're not lost after the session as well. There are ways how to keep in touch with us. If you prefer, you can send an email to mapper-support@hotosm.org. Typically, questions will be reviewed. Oh, what about the upload? I'm sorry. Yeah, good point. All right. So if you want to upload something, as I said, use the upload icon, and then it first gets back if it finds some mysterious things which should be fixed. So for instance, place without name, I guess that's the one I placed there right in the beginning of the session, unconnected nodes. So if you want to review that, you hit cancel. And then you've got here this validation results window with all those warnings present. So expand it a little bit. And you can zoom to the problem using the context menu with the right mouse button. Okay, that's where we were. Of course, we need to clean out here the South Africa imagery, which does no longer work where I was initially. Okay, of course, it's this node. Well, in this case, we would leave it as it is, simply because, yeah, when remote mapping, we see that this is clearly near Hamlet, but of course, we've got no idea what name it has. So we have to leave this to some people on the ground. Unconnected nodes without physical tags, typically not nice. So, okay. If you see something like this, then you can safely remove that, because a node which is just there is certainly left over from some previous editing stuff. So let's see what the others here are. Okay, they're all in the same category. So in this case, you would so you would simply select here and then delete them because they have no significance. And after that, the only thing which remains is the place without name, which we said, well, let's ignore that because we can't find a name for that. We would continue upload. And then it'll ask you to provide a brief comment on all that. So the imagery is typically automatically inserted, and the comment should explain to others, well, how or why you were doing this. It just say adding a few things at place X, Y, Z is not really an additional information, because if someone takes a look at your changes, that one will see where you were editing. So the imagery layer is typically also automatically recorded. If that field isn't already pre-filled, then fill it in yourself, because that should always go with the data, the imagery used. But other than that, it's quite interesting to know, have you been remotely mapping or have you done a survey on the ground? So that is, of course, a vastly different level of reliability. Or if you had any additional sources, just for instance, looking at mapillary images, just specify that in here. So describe how you were getting to the data and what you know or what you didn't know. That's a lot more helpful for others than just saying where you were editing or that you were editing 3 shots, because everyone can see that. And then if you then press upload changes, then it'll go onto the server. And from there on will be available for anyone else. Of course, you can always cancel any step here. If you, for instance, see, oh, there must be some objects here which I really didn't want to commit right now, then you can always cancel and go back to reviewing things before uploading them. So these validation results here are always quite a good thing, has always been mentioned. Yeah, so if you're not sure about anything, you can review your editing just by hitting here on the validation, performs the data validation button, and that then it will validate the complete area, all your changes, yeah, the complete area which has been downloaded. Just make sure that you did not accidentally keep something here selected, because then the validation is extremely quick, because it only runs on the selected objects. Always make sure, hitting the escape key, that you deselect anything before running a complete validation check over all these data. It's highly customizable, by the way. That's also from the preferences, the data validator. So if there are checks which you really don't want to see, because you think there is nothing you can really do about that, then you would simply be able to, yeah, for instance, public transport routes. If you're not into public transport mapping, and a mapping nevertheless in cities where there is a high probability that public transport routes have been added, and it might be worthwhile switching this one off and but most of the checks here definitely make sense. So usually the default isn't too bad an idea, and if you run it, then well, it'll spit out a whole lot of things. Well, yeah, so role verification problems in relations is probably not what you really need. Unnamed ways is typically something we have to ignore in remote mapping, because we don't know of those here. Untagged ways is certainly something to have a look at. And yeah, unnecessary tag, yeah, that's something you can remove, but it's not really a problem. But missing tags, yeah, place without name is okay. Deprecated tagging is also something which is not really a must to clean up. So, but if you see here that something's overlapping or that something is not tagged at all, that's something you should really talk about. Yeah. So I see that. Yeah. So there are no questions about this year at the moment. So yeah, I think yeah, it's time to get to the last slide. As I was starting to tell everyone here, there are ways to contact us later on. You can write an email to mapper-support@hotosm.org. Several people will be watching that mailing list, certainly not 24/7 with 15 minutes response time, but you will get an answer. If you want to get in touch with the training working group, well, just drop a line at training@hotosm.org. We also use the hot Slack system as our, well, basically our main means of communication. So you can join through slack.hotosm.org, and after answering a few questions, you will be provided a link where you can join. At the beginning, you will be in the general channel. So there is also a mapper support channel where you can ask questions. There is also a channel of its own dedicated to the tasking manager. And of course, the training working group has a channel there as well. So there are various ways to get in touch with many people. Just browse through the list of channels. And yeah, if you want to know more about the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team in general, just go to the website, www.hotosm.org, where you can learn about what this organization does, how you can get in touch with it, what other working groups there are, if you want to be more involved in all that. We always like to hear from your feedback. Other than that, yeah, first of all, thanks to my fellow presenters here, Jeffrey and Mercy, for the time spent here and for the effort they took. And of course, thank you for all those participants. The number was always between 50 and 70 today, which is certainly pretty close to a record. So yeah, that is our best motivation, and also your many questions you had is our best motivation to keep on with this series. There will be a follow-up webinar on more advanced topics about JOSM. So it will, of course, be announced in due time on the usual social media channel, exactly where you were informed about this webinar. So I'd expect that to be maybe late in January or maybe even early February. Let's see, we have to coordinate that. But usually we hold webinars every 2 months. So so I guess second half of January or first half of February is something you can expect. Yeah, and I think with that, Jeffrey, we can stop our recording, and I guess